The cruelest wound I ever carried wasn't from war. It was the day my family dragged me into court and called me a fraud. My brother claimed I had faked my rank. And my mother, she stood beside him. That betrayal shattered something inside me, something no uniform or medal could ever repair. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, grab a cozy seat, maybe a cup of coffee or tea, and prepare yourself for a tale that will captivate your heart from beginning to end. Let's begin. The sky over rural Colorado was heavy with late autumn gray, the kind of sky that pressed down on the land and made even the mountains look muted. Wind rattled through the pine trees lining the Warren family ranch, carrying a chill that seeped into the wooden farmhouse where relatives had gathered for the one-year memorial of Alex and Michael's father. Inside, the air was still, tense. The tick of the wall clock echoed louder than it should have. Alex sat near the end of the long dining table, her fingers unconsciously turning the silver ring her father had once worn. It was the only anchor she had as memories of him. Strict but protective, proud yet warm, rose unbidden. She had braced herself for grief. She hadn't braced herself for what was about to come. The family attorney cleared his throat and unfolded a stack of papers, his voice deliberate. The land and the ranch shall pass to the child whose career is deemed most reliable. The words dropped like stones into the room. Murmurs rippled, eyes shifted, suspicion already taking shape. Michael leaned back in his chair, a smirk curling at his lips. A reliable career? We all know who doesn't qualify. You've never really been an officer, Alex. Not once. All you have are stories no one's ever verified. His tone dripped with disdain, and several cousins nodded under their breath. Alex's chest tightened. Her hands clenched around the ring. The sting of betrayal burned even more when she caught her mother's expression. No protest, no defense, only cold silence. What should have been a solemn family remembrance had transformed in an instant. The memorial was gone, replaced by a battlefield. And Alex, without warning, had become the accused. It didn't take long for the whispers to spread. In a small Colorado town, word traveled faster than the wind that swept across the plains. By the end of the week, the memorial service had turned into the talk of Main Street. People who had once greeted Alex warmly now offered only stiff nods or avoided her altogether. At the Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall, where her father used to sit proudly during parades, the mood shifted cold. When Alex walked in, hoping for a moment of solace, the men at the back table fell silent. One veteran, his cap tilted low over weathered eyes, finally muttered, "If you were really a captain, how come no one's ever seen you in uniform at the town parades?" Not once. The words landed heavy, and Alex felt the sting ripple through the room. Conversations resumed, but not with her. The isolation grew. At the grocery store, mothers whispered by the produce section. At church, she caught parishioners glancing her way, shaking their heads. Even her old high school teacher, who once praised her ambition, offered only a polite smile before turning away. The final blow came in the form of paperwork. Michael, relentless, filed a civil lawsuit in county court. The claim was blunt and public. Alex Warren had falsified her military rank to seize control of the family estate. Her name appeared in the local paper, beneath the headline, "Sister Accused of Military Fraud." Then, the damage was done. Alex wasn't just doubted. She was branded. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and polished wood, its solemnity pressing on Alex as she sat at the defendant's table. It was only a preliminary hearing, yet the gallery was packed. Neighbors, distant relatives, curious townsfolk all hungry to watch the drama unfold. Michael sat across from her, smug in a tailored suit. His attorney, David Ross, at his side. Ross was slick, confident, the type who thrived on spectacle. With a deliberate flourish, he placed a document on the judge's bench. "Your Honor," he said, "this is a copy of Miss Warren's DD 214. It shows she was separated as a private, not an officer. The claim of being a captain is a fabrication." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The page looked official enough. Aged paper, government headers, neat typewritten lines. But Alex's stomach turned. She knew it was a forgery. Yet in that moment, the weight of public opinion shifted even further against her. Judge Hall, measured and cautious, leaned forward. This will be reviewed in full. For now, the court finds sufficient grounds to proceed with the case. Her gavel struck once, sealing Alex's fate for the months ahead. As if that weren't enough, the fallout reached her civilian career. An email arrived the next morning from her employer. Pending investigation into these allegations, your consultancy contract is suspended. The glowing office badge that once symbolized her transition from military to civilian life was now nothing more than a useless piece of plastic. On Main Street, whispers grew louder. To the town, to her family, to almost everyone, Alex Warren was no longer a respected veteran. She was a fraud. The county courthouse felt colder that morning. Though the sun outside blazed bright, Alex sat stiffly, palms damp, as witnesses were called one by one. When her mother's name was announced, Alex's breath caught. Margaret Warren, her own mother, walked to the stand with steady steps, a neatly pressed dress, and an expression as unyielding as stone. Sworn in, Margaret clasped her hands and faced the judge. I have never once seen my daughter in an officer's uniform, she said firmly. Not at a promotion ceremony, not in photographs, not even in private. To my knowledge, she was never a captain. The words hit Alex like a physical blow. She gripped the folded handkerchief her father had once carried, holding on as if it were the last thread connecting her to truth. The courtroom murmured, hungry for scandal. Michael smirked in satisfaction, his eyes flashing victory. By afternoon, local papers ran the story with bold headlines. Daughter accused of faking military rank. Even, mother casts doubt. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was public, splashed across newsstands and cafe counters. Alex could feel her father's absence like a wound. The one parent who might have defended her was gone, and the one who remained had chosen the other side. The days that followed bled into one another, each heavier than the last. Alex reached out to Ethan Price, a comrade she trusted, who had once fought beside her overseas. His voice on the phone was hesitant, strained. Alex, I owe you everything, but I can't testify. If I get involved, I'll lose my job. I have kids to feed. I'm sorry. When the call ended, silence filled her small rented house. She stared at the walls, at the boxes of military keepsakes she had never unpacked. For the first time, she wondered if she truly stood alone, family against her, community against her, even comrades too afraid to stand up. Late one night, as she sat at her desk with the lamp casting a dim circle of light, her laptop pinged. A new email appeared. The subject line read only, "For you." Attached was a photograph, grainy but unmistakable. It was her, in full uniform, receiving a commendation, the rank of captain clearly visible on her shoulder. Tears pricked her eyes. Whoever sent it had risked something to deliver this proof. It was small, fragile, and anonymous, but for the first time in weeks, Alex felt a flicker of hope. Somewhere out there, she wasn't completely alone. Someone still believed. Behind the scenes, Michael's case gained momentum not only through accusations, but through darker means. Late one evening, David Ross, his polished shoes clicking down the dim corridor of a federal records office, slid an envelope thick with bills across a desk. The clerk hesitated, eyes darting to the security camera above, but greed won out. The deal was simple. Delay the release of Alex's official military records for as long as possible. The effect was immediate. Each time Alex's attorney filed a request for her OMPF, the original personnel file, the response came back processing, pending, or temporarily unavailable to the court. It appeared as if she had nothing to prove her rank. But Ross hadn't been as careful as he believed. One camera caught the unmistakable image of him leaning over the clerk's desk, sliding the envelope. The footage sat buried in the system, unnoticed. Yet it existed, a silent witness waiting for the right moment. As if that weren't enough, Michael doubled down, hiring a so-called handwriting expert to testify that Alex's signatures on past documents were forgeries. In the eyes of the public, It added another layer of suspicion. Not only was she accused of faking her rank, but now even her paperwork was deemed unreliable. The noose tightened. The county courthouse brimmed with spectators. Reporters, neighbors, and distant relatives filled every seat, their murmurs swelling into a restless hum. Alex sat at the defense table, her posture rigid but her spirit fraying. Across the aisle, Michael radiated smug confidence, leaning back as Ross began his assault. "Your Honor," Ross barked, waving a stack of papers, "we have overwhelming evidence that Miss Warren misrepresented herself. Witnesses, including her own mother, support our claim. What more is needed?" The blows came fast. Accusations, innuendos, references to the so-called forged files. Each word chipped at Alex's resolve. She lowered her eyes. Her father's handkerchief clenched tight, and remembered his voice. "Honor is the only thing you must protect, even when the world turns against you." Her attorney fought back, scrutinizing the alleged documents. During cross-examination, he paused, studying the pages carefully. "This print," he said slowly, "uses a specialized toner unique to one particular office printer." He turned his gaze toward Ross. "The same model found in your firm." A ripple of shock ran through the gallery. For the first time, Ross's smirk faltered. But the revelation, though damning, was incomplete. Without the original records, the argument could not overturn the case. Alex exhaled shakily, aware that the tide had shifted only slightly. The truth had begun to surface, but the scales of justice still leaned against her. The battle was far from won. The trial was grinding toward its grim end. Hours of testimony had worn Alex down to a fragile shell. Ross hammered the same accusations again and again. False rank, forged documents, a career invented for inheritance. The judge's face remained measured, but her silence felt heavy. The gallery murmured with restless certainty. Alex was losing. Her attorney leaned close. "Without the official records, I can only hold them off so long." Alex nodded numbly, clutching her father's handkerchief in both hands. The weight of defeat pressed down. This was how it ended. Not on a battlefield overseas, not in the line of duty, but here, in her hometown courthouse, branded a liar. Then, just as Ross rose to deliver his closing argument, the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open with a resonant bang. The room stilled. Heavy footsteps struck the floor in perfect unison, measured, disciplined, unmistakable. Every head turned. Colonel Raymond Miller led the way, crisp in full-dress uniform. Behind him marched a line of soldiers and former comrades, their shoes hitting the wooden floor in rhythm, their ribbons and medals gleaming under the courtroom lights. The murmurs died instantly. "Your Honor!" Miller's voice carried, steady and commanding. "We are here to testify on behalf of Captain Alexandra Warren." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Ross froze. Papers clutched midair. The colonel approached the bench, presenting a sealed folder. Original OMPF file, certified and unaltered. A letter from the Judge Advocate General's office. And, if the court permits, photographic evidence from active deployments. An album was placed on the evidence table. Page after page revealed Alex in uniform, leading squads, briefing missions, standing at attention during promotions. The rank insignia gleamed from her shoulders, undeniable. And then came the voice Alex hadn't expected. From the back of the line, Ethan Price stepped forward. He looked nervous but resolute. "Your Honor," he said, facing the judge before turning toward the crowd. "This woman saved my life. In Kandahar, 2014. A convoy was ambushed. She pulled me out while bullets flew overhead. If she hadn't been there as my commanding officer, I wouldn't be standing here today." The silence was absolute. Even the judge paused, studying Alex. Then the faces of her comrades, who stood at rigid attention. The weight of their presence filled the room like a living force. Alex's throat tightened. For weeks she had been crushed by doubt, abandoned by family, shamed by her own community. But in this moment, surrounded by those who knew the truth, the tide had finally turned. The courtroom was already trembling under the weight of the soldier's testimony when Judge Hall leaned forward. Her gaze shifted from Colonel Miller's documents to the nervous clerk sitting near the back. "There is one matter we must address," she said, her voice even, carrying a quiet steel. Bring in the security footage. A monitor flickered to life, the grainy black and white image unmistakable. David Ross sliding a thick envelope across a government desk. The clerk on duty hesitated, then pocketed it. The room gasped in unison. Ross shot to his feet, his voice rising. This is a misrepresentation, taken out of context. Enough, Judge Hall cut in, her gavel striking hard. This court does not tolerate obstruction of justice. What I see is bribery, plain and simple. You will answer for it before the state bar. Michael leapt from his chair, face flushed crimson. This is all lies. She's tricked you. She tricked everyone. His shouts echoed as bailiffs rushed forward. He kicked against their grip, his voice cracking into desperation. She doesn't deserve the land. I was supposed to have it. The judge's tone sharpened, silencing the chaos. Order in this courtroom. Another strike of the gavel reverberated. The bailiffs dragged Michael back, his protests fading into the heavy hush that followed. Judge Hall turned to Alex, her eyes steady. The court finds no evidence that Alexandra Warren falsified her rank. The official OMPF records, corroborating testimony, and photographic evidence establish beyond doubt that she served honorably as a captain. The civil claim is dismissed. The estate is hereby awarded to Miss Warren, in accordance with her father's will. The decision rippled through the room like a breaking wave. Relief and vindication surged in Alex's chest, though she kept her composure, her father's handkerchief still clenched in her palm. For once, silence fell not out of suspicion, but out of recognition. Margaret rose quietly from her seat. She did not look at her daughter. Her face was pale, unreadable. Without a word, she gathered her coat and slipped out through the side door, leaving Alex with a pang deeper than any courtroom victory could soothe. Colonel Miller gave a firm nod. Ethan stood at attention, eyes glistening. Around them, the gallery no longer whispered, they only watched. Alex exhaled slowly. The storm had passed. Justice, at long last, had spoken. Spring in Colorado has a way of softening even the hardest winters. The snow had melted from the ridgelines, and wildflowers pushed their way through the thawing earth around the Warren Ranch. For the first time in years, the property felt alive again, not a battleground for inheritance, but a place of renewal. Alex stood on the porch of the farmhouse, her boots planted firmly on the worn wooden boards. The air carried the smell of fresh grass and pine, mixed with the faint aroma of coffee drifting from the kitchen inside. She listened to the sound she had once thought impossible here. Laughter. Real laughter. On the front lawn, a group of veterans sat gathered around picnic tables. Some wore faded unit caps, others simple work shirts, all of them carrying scars the world rarely saw. They nursed steaming mugs of coffee, swapping stories of sleepless nights, of deployments that still haunted them, of victories and failures alike. For once, though, their voices were light. The tension eased. Here, no one judged. Here, they were understood. The sign at the entrance read, Veterans Recovery Ranch, in honor of those who served. It wasn't flashy, just carved wood and weatherproof paint. But it stood tall, like a promise kept. Alex had used her inheritance not as a weapon of pride, but as a foundation to build something lasting, a refuge for those who, like her, had carried the weight of service long after leaving the battlefield. Inside the farmhouse, the walls had been repaired, the rooms repurposed for group sessions, quiet reading corners, and bunks for those who needed a temporary place to stay. In the living room, above the mantel, Alex placed the object most sacred to her, her father's silver ring. It gleamed faintly in the golden light of dusk, a reminder of the man who had believed in honor above all else. She paused before it, her hand brushing the wood of the mantel. The memories of the courtroom still lingered. The accusations, the betrayal, the way her own mother had turned away. Those wounds had not healed entirely. Maybe they never would. But as she looked out through the window at the veterans laughing on her porch, she understood something deeper. Family is not always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the people who walk in beside you when the world tries to tear you down. The sun began to sink behind the mountains, bathing the ranch in amber light. Alex stood a little taller, shoulders no longer burdened by doubt. She had been accused, isolated, dragged through humiliation, And yet she had emerged with her honor intact. Blood ties might betray, communities might falter, but truth, courage and honor. They had found their defenders. And in that, Alex discovered her new beginning. Because honor, once lived, never stands alone. In every life, there comes a season when truth is tested. Sometimes it is challenged not by strangers, but by those closest to us, the very voices we once trusted to protect us. And when that moment arrives, the weight of doubt can feel unbearable. Yet history, time and again, reminds us that truth has a quiet endurance. It may be buried beneath lies. It may be delayed by injustice, but it does not vanish. It waits, patient and steady, until it can rise. Honor, in its truest form, is not granted by applause or recognition. It is not secured by the approval of a crowd or the fleeting praise of a family name. Honor is lived, day by day, choice by choice, etched into the very fabric of a person's actions. And when tested, it is honor that withstands storms, not because it is loud, but because it is real. There is a deeper lesson in the way betrayal and redemption walk hand in hand. Betrayal wounds us, cuts us open in ways nothing else can, but it also sharpens our understanding of who truly stands with us. Sometimes blood ties falter, but loyalty born from shared struggle and truth proves stronger. Family is not always defined by lineage. It is defined by trust, respect, and the willingness to stand when others remain silent. And from loss, new beginnings often emerge. The places once marked by conflict can be remade into sanctuaries of healing. The chapters written in pain can become prefaces to resilience. What matters most is not how many accusations one endures, but whether one chooses to rise from them, unbroken and resolute. So the lesson lingers. Truth will always find its voice. Honor will always find its defenders. And betrayal, no matter how bitter, can be transformed into a foundation for something greater. Out of ashes, renewal takes shape. Out of conflict, purpose is born. If this story spoke to you, we'd love to hear your reflections. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might resonate with someone who needs to hear it. And if you'd like to continue exploring stories of resilience, justice, and renewal, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our community. Together, we carry forward the reminder that truth endures, honor matters, and renewal is always possible.